There are a few pieces of paper in the back of your textbook that are for you to write on and further explain what we expect of you from our program, not only in the classroom but also behind the wheel. Now what I want to do is just highlight the last few pages, which is the important information sheets. And what you want to understand on this first page is this is again for you. Now I pulled this out of the book, so I'm not flipping through the book while I'm explaining this to you, but this is embedded into your book. Trust me, it is. You can look right now actually. Actually, let's do that. Why don't you flip to the back of the book and find these pages. Okay, now that you've got them, this is an important information sheet. Now right here it says your class meets at such and such location. So what I would like instructors to do is pause this video and explain to the students where your class meets. Now I'm not talking about in general, but I'm talking about specifically what classroom number at what high school, for instance. So instructors, please do that now. Okay, now right next to that is from what time. Class might be from 2:30 to 4:30, or some states where you can do more than 2 hours a day, 3 to 6 p.m. Let's write that in that section right there. Now this whole sheet is very important, but this part might be one of the more important parts of this entire sheet, and that is your instructor's name and cell phone number, because it's going to be extremely important if you have any issues for any driving times or classroom times and you're not going to be able to make them, to make sure to get a hold of your instructor in enough time for them to be aware of why you can't make any of those times. So I'd like to pause now, and instructors, please give your full name and your phone number so that students may be able to reach you via calling you or texting you. Next on this sheet is a list of dates and times of class. Well, they're not dates and times filled in yet. Actually, that's going to be your job along with your instructors. But what I want instructors and students to do now is go through and discuss each of the days of class, as well as what's going to be assigned on those days, and those days that unfortunately there is a little bit of homework, what's going to be expected for you to bring back the very next day. We don't want any guesswork here between instructors and students, so we want everybody to be on the same page as you go through this program, hopefully passing the first time, learning everything the All-Star way. Alright, the last thing on this page, now we got one more page after this, the last thing on this page is your meeting time for your behind the wheel lessons. Now, yes, you might be taking a class of ours at a local high school, or depending on wherever our classroom location is. That isn't necessarily where you're always going to get picked up and dropped off for your behind the wheel times. So I want instructors to now pause the video yet again and explain to the students of exactly where they are to be picked up and dropped off. And it will differ depending on, in some cases, where you might be picked up at a certain location, but if you start class right after that driving lesson, you and your driving instructor would end at the classroom session. Now flip the page. This other page right here is more about the behind the wheel lessons and what's expected of you. Now you're going to sign up for X number of behind the wheel lessons. Again, I say X number because, as I mentioned earlier, depending on your state law, depending on how much your parents or guardians have signed you up for, it could be anywhere from 6 hours all the way up to 10 hours of behind the wheel lessons, or it could even be more than that if they really want you to stay with us for a longer period of time. All of the behind the wheel lessons that you sign up for with us, which I'll go over later, there's going to be put into this right here. You've got, as you see, your hour, the date, the time of each lesson, and the name of the instructor. Now some locations you might just have one instructor for all your behind the wheel as well as classroom time. But then there's other locations where you might have up to possibly 10 driving instructor choices and a classroom instructor. So it's very important that you pay full attention to who the instructor is for which each lesson you are to take, so that you're not walking up to the wrong vehicle with the wrong instructor, hopping in, taking off, and then finding out 10 minutes later, whoops, I was supposed to be with so-and-so instead. When you sign up for a driving time, it's expected of you that you are going to be at that time. If you need to make a change, even if it's 24 hours in advance after the first week of class, we have to charge you a change fee. And the reason for that is we can't continue to keep making driving schedule changes throughout the entire program based on things that have popped up on your personal calendar throughout the month. If you can imagine you plus all of your fellow students plus X amount of driving hours and everyone doing that all the time to us, it's out of control and we wouldn't be able to handle it. So we put in these extra fees to try to prohibit you from making such changes unless you really feel that you need to. So instructors, please pause the video and explain that fee right now. This next section is talking about a lot of additional fees that you're going to owe us if you're not showing responsibility and bringing all that we're asking of you for both classroom lessons as well as driving lessons. Now this first little gap right here that instructors you're going to need to fill in with the students depending on the going rate at this point in time is if you do not bring your textbook to a driving lesson, you will be required to pay an additional fee of what? Instructors, please pause the video and fill that number in. Now the reason that fee is so important is because these textbooks, as you look through the back pages of the book, you'll notice that they're for you as well as the instructor to write in about your driving lessons. So by not bringing your book, and if, as I mentioned earlier, you could have up to 10 different choices of driving instructors, your driving instructor from your first hour to the driving instructor of your second hour to the driving instructor of your third hour and so forth, they're not going to know what you performed on the previous hour. So that is why it's so important that you bring your book each time so the instructors can make the necessary notes to the fellow instructors. Not to mention, I'm sure your parents and your guardian are going to want to know how well you did at each lesson. The next important additional fee is a no-show fee. Now what I mean by that is if you sign up for a driving time on such and such date at such and such time with such and such instructor, and you decide not to show up because you met that new girl or boyfriend and they're going to the mall today and you thought, wow, for me to have a chance to become that new girl or boyfriend of theirs, I need to go to the mall too and it's more important than getting my driving time. Well, that might be, but it's going to be a pretty expensive move on your part because we're paying our instructor to be there with you at that time, assuming that you're going to be showing up for your driving time. So, if you choose to make that move, you're going to owe us X amount of dollars for missing that time. Instructors, please pause the video and put in that amount right now. Lastly, I wouldn't say most important because I think I already said that once, but we want to see both your signature and your parent or guardian signature on this page after you've finished writing everything else out, signing up for all your drive times, putting those down on here as well, because we want to assure, again, as mentioned earlier, we are all on the same page and we are all in this together to get you passed through driver's ed the all-star way. So we are going to validate and make sure that you and your parent or guardian has signed and approved that you understand all that's expected of you throughout our program, both classroom and behind the wheel and communication to your instructor staff.